Aloha and welcome everyone back to the Awakening to the Magic of the Menstrual Cycle Summit. If this is your first time tuning in, my name is Angel. Thank you so much for being here. If you are returning, you already know my name, and thank you very much for coming back for another awesome session with another amazing woman. Today I have Lisa with me. Is it Lisa de Jong? Yes, okay, from Dublin, Ireland. And I'm just gonna read her bio for anybody who's not familiar with her. Miss Lisa, another one of my global sisters that I didn't know existed until I started on this journey. Lisa is a menstruality or period coach, teaching women how to live in sync with the menstrual cycle for physical and emotional well-being. Coming from years of debilitating period pain herself, she embarked on a journey of healing and self-discovery through the changing energies of the menstrual cycle. She has trained in various disciplines to support this work, including restorative Pilates and yoga, menstruality leadership with Red School, and group facilitation skills. With a background in communications, a passion for the arts, and an exploration of both spiritual practices and science, she brings menstruality to a practical level while also holding a depth of space. She works with clients one-on-one and facilitates online courses and group coaching. And you can find her at her website, yourcyclematters.com. Welcome, Lisa. I'm so excited to be here with you.
Thank you, Angel. Thank you so much. Lovely to be here.
I remember you were actually the first woman that I spoke to at all for this summit. And I was like so excited after getting off the phone with you because you just felt like we had so much in common. Like you were such a beautiful mirror for me. And we had such it's like so many similarities in our journey that brought us to where we're at now with this work. And it just really, it kind of like gave me a little peek into how exciting this whole experience was going to be and how amazing the women are that are part of this.
Yeah, wonderful. I didn't know I was the first one you spoke to.
Yeah.
We really connected on that call, didn't we? Yeah,
Definitely. And so if anybody that has been watching this has seen the interview that I did with Sharni and Alexandra, they are the founders of Red School, and Lisa here has worked with them in their Red School training. Mm-hmm. How has that gone for you? Can you tell us a little bit about that experience?
Yeah, so I came across Red School kind of in their early days when I was like looking for answers, and there weren't that many answers, and I then did an online course with them a good few years ago, probably 8 or 9 years ago, and then I was living in the UK in Manchester, and their apprenticeship opened up, so I signed up to do what was called at that time the Women's Quest Apprenticeship. I think it's called the menstruality leadership now, but it's the kind of the training that they do, the foundation training that they do. So that was it was 2 weeks. So 1 week was in, I think 1 week was in September, and then the second week was in May or June. So it was almost a year. It was about 9 months, 10 months or so. And so in each residential, there were about I think 15 to 20 women in our group. And it was amazing. We had teachings on all of the work that Shani and Alexandra have brought out into the world in terms of menstrual cycle awareness. We covered topics like creativity, spirituality, the inner critic. So lots of juice there. And because we were in a group as well, we did a lot of sharing and connecting and a lot of process work as well. We were really going to quite deep places using our practice of menstrual cycle awareness. And I'm still in touch with a lot of those women actually. So, because they're, that's a big part of my practice is to connect with other women who are also doing that work, and sharing. I have something called a listening partner. So every 2 weeks we have an online call where we just share, each of us shares for 10 minutes, and we don't give feedback, we just listen to each other, and it creates a lovely sacred space for each woman to share, to be heard, to be seen. And that whole idea of not giving feedback in such a structure allows over time, allows for the woman who's sharing and also the woman who's listening to develop that sense of inner authority with her cycle, with herself, with her intuition.
Mm.
So yeah, that's kind of a very long answer to your question, but that was like how I began with Red School, and what that training looked like. Yeah, it's very special, very, very special.
It sounds very special and like a powerful container for personal development.
Yeah, I mean, like, yeah, I think like in terms of personal development, like the menstrual cycle is, has not been acknowledged at all in any personal development world at all, and it's only really come out now in the last few years, and it's so powerful, Angel. It's like, it's just, yeah, this needs to be more mainstream, definitely.
It is. That's the purpose of this whole summit and why you do the work that you do.
Yeah, exactly.
It's life-changing when you really start turning your awareness towards this, the magic that is the menstrual cycle,
Yeah.
and really start feeling its effect on your life. It just makes me wonder how we have survived as long as we have, so out of touch with it, because when you really experience the change that it gives your life, nothing else could do that for you, and there's really no words to describe the experience. It just transforms you from the inside out, not only your relationship with yourself, with the earth, but with all of the relationships in your life, the way that you think, your relationship with whatever higher power you believe in, and it's just really incredible. So I'm so grateful for women like yourself that are out there supporting other women to make that connection and journey through their own menstrual cycles and come home to themselves.
Yeah, yeah, you really hit the nail on the head there with that, the way you described it. And like, how you said about like, we didn't really, like, before I came across this work, I was just barely surviving. I was in that survival mode of like, but not living, like, and that's exactly what it is. I came back to my body. And even today I was writing a piece on the first time I got period pain, which was when I was about 13 or 14. And I developed, because I'm someone who has struggled a lot with pain in relation to my periods. I over time developed like a fear of my periods. Like I was in fear of my menstrual cycle, and I was not safe in my body as a woman. Like the cyclical nature of my body was harmful. So that's exactly it. So that's what, going back to what you said, menstrual cycle awareness helped me to come home to myself, helped me to very gently, because it can be a long journey for some people, but over time develop a safer relationship, feel more connected, feel more, just not be afraid all the time of this natural thing that happens,
Yeah.
Like, I think we're entitled to that, aren't we?
Well, yeah, and I feel like most women feel and still view it as an inconvenience and a burden because society doesn't support us living in a cyclical way with our own rhythms and the rhythms of the earth. And it's really the artificial pace that the world has been stuck in for so long that makes our cycles so awful for us. And
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I know that, like, if you have really challenging cycles, there's work to do, like,
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't just overnight that my period went from like being really painful and debilitating and like emotionally and mentally overwhelming to like a blissful communion with God. It wasn't like one cycle changed, and like changed everything. But over time, like creating more space in my life just in general, and not having my calendar so filled and have to like force myself to go to work when my womb is like engorged and filled with blood and I'm so emotionally sensitive, to not force myself to be around like a million people in the public.
Yeah.
Just that relief alone like gave me so much healing, to just finally be able to rest and
Yeah.
to lay there and cry
Yeah.
and
And
be in,
bleed.
like actually be able to sit there and be in pain and not pretend like I'm okay and put a fake smile on and just keep grinding ahead like all of us at one point or another have been forced to do. Just creating some space for the cycle alone, not even like doing any elaborate work with it, provides healing.
Yeah, totally. And that's what I learned in my on my journey, was like, I mean, that's not the only thing that helped me, but it is, that's kind of number one thing that I encourage people to do, is to create space for for menstruation. And it's different for every woman, because, you know, some women might be like really run off their feet with kids and with a job and stuff. So it's
Right.
really what works for them in the context of their life. But if you create space, like even just little bits at a time, it just makes the world a difference. You get that breather. Even this evening, like I looked at I'm on day 28, so that means I'm coming to the end of my cycle, just about to start my period.
Mm-hmm.
And it's that time where, when I look at my calendar, I start to feel a little overwhelmed, and I'm like, oh, I need to maybe I need to create space somewhere. Can I move something elsewhere? So I just moved a social thing to somewhere else, and it was fine with my friend. And it just created that sense of relief in myself, you know, just to have that quiet time. Because it's hard to commit to everything and then go against ourselves when our bodies are actually calling us to come back and to rest. Yeah, like winter, you know, the inner winter is menstruation. Mm,
Definitely.
mm,
Yeah, it's amazing um how much like space that creates like in your mental field, like just even just doing like a little adjustment like that, like changing a social event for instance,
yeah,
gives you, can provide you with so much relief. And I think a good amount of that comes from just like giving yourself permission to not say yes to everything all the time, and say no and yes to yourself, and have boundaries and really honor yourself.
yeah, yeah, totally, totally. Um, it's actually interesting now that I'm thinking about it, Angel, because for me, I'm going through an interesting experience at the moment where, like, I started to practice menstrual cycle awareness, and I started to create loads of space in my diary, which I do.
Mhm.
Um, but because of the journey I've been on, and the psychological approach I took to my healing, um, and that whole thing I spoke around about fear and fearing my period, I would have been very much in a place where during my period I'd be afraid to go to leave the apartment, you know. So it wasn't always it was out of fear that I would not book things in. So now I'm in this place where I'm like, okay, I'm going to give myself lots of space and time to rest, but at the same time I still want to be able to do my work and show up. And like, I have a call because we're in this global lockdown at the moment. I can't leave to see my family. But I have a call with my family, and there's like going to be 6 of us on Zoom tomorrow, and those Zoom calls are still draining. Like they're still take your
Yeah,
energy. Um, but
outside.
yeah, but what I'm trying to say is that, like, I still I'm trying to not cancel everything out of fear. I still want to be able to show up, and that's me. That's that part of me that's still learning to trust my cycle, to not always be in pain, because I don't get pain always. I don't get really as much pain anymore, but there's still that thing in my head that's like, oh, I need to not have anything in my diary. It's like, oh, actually I think 1 or 2 things like that are helpful and nourishing and fun. Speaking with my little nephew who's 4, um that's a lovely thing that doesn't feel like work. So yeah, it's just funny that I just was thinking of that when you were speaking. Yeah.
Well, yeah, and you bring up a good point too, because like not all interactions and activities are the same type of like energetic frequency. Some of
Yeah.
them really require a lot more of your energy and presence to give, and some of them can give back to you and be nourishing. So it's really good to like remember that and kind of like use that concept to find some balance and
Yeah.
know that you don't like, I feel like it's great if you like want to completely cocoon up and you have the freedom and support to just go completely inward, but that's not what's realistic for most women on the planet right
Yeah.
now.
Yeah. Yeah.
Remembering that there's different varieties and kind of like flavors of interactions that will be more nourishing and will require less output from you, especially when you're menstruating and in that sensitive time. Like maybe not saying no to everything because that's not realistic, but kind of shifting your schedule around and doing your best to keep the things that will give back to you also.
Yeah. That's it. Yeah. Yeah. You're in a good communication day. I'm on that day 28, a little bit of brain fog. So take me a while to get the point clear. But yeah, it's like,
That's okay.
question would be like, what's nourishing for me? Or how can I make this interaction more nourishing? Can I ask for support from my partner? Or, can I ask my kid to, I don't know, just to change the dynamic so that you're not always having to be in on mode, and I think that's the healing. That's the lovely thing we can do in relationships. They're fluid, they're dynamic.
Yeah.
And it's really taking responsibility then for ourselves in terms of what it is that we need, and the answer mightn't always come back the way we want to, but at least we asked.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think that's the harder pieces for women is to really start putting themselves first
Yeah.
and being. It takes practice, but I am coming into ovulation in a few days, so I've got plenty of energy for both of us.
Brilliant, Angel. That's wonderful. That's a lovely place.
Totally. A great time to do interviews.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to circle back around to something that we said a couple of minutes ago about how like not the way that our society is structured right now, it's very not supportive of any type of cyclical nature, let alone the menstrual cycle, which is why so many women suffer from so many things. And I just want to say that like I don't have children yet, and I have intentionally created my life and held insane boundaries at times to make sure that I have space to honor my cycle because I know it's a huge part of my life purpose path. And I have also spent time thinking about everyone who doesn't have that opportunity so much. And there's been so many times that I have feel like a lot of what I do in my life is not just for me. I do it for everyone who can't, who doesn't have the opportunity, like women who have a bunch of children or who have to work or just are in different situations where they don't have the types of opportunities that I do have. I bleed for them too, I honor my cycle and I do my healing and inner work for the world and for everyone to be able to have that opportunity and the freedom to do this for themselves too. So
Beautiful.
I just
Yeah.
want to say that and I'm sure I mean that's how all healing work goes. It's not ever just for ourselves. It always reflects back in the collective and eventually helps everyone else. But just to be mindful of the fact that not everybody has that opportunity and to know that other people doing their work supports you. It supports everyone.
Yeah.
And like the way that I talk to women about it is because I get asked a lot, like, how can I honor my cycle if I have a bunch of them on my plate right now? have a lot of stuff to do. I'm sure you get asked that all the time too. And oftentimes I'm just encouraging women to get creative. And I like to refer to like your current situation as your life puzzle that you're working, and no one else can figure it out for you. So you have to get creative with your life puzzle and like kind of investigate and look at it and play around with it and see how you can kind of like shift things around, even if it's just moving at a slower pace. Even have a bunch of in your calendar to just go slower, maybe not do the millions of dishes at the second that they're dirty. Like let the dishes pile up so that you can rest for a little bit, like allow a mess to happen in order to create some space for your body to rest and for you to heal. And like for busy moms, just give yourself like a couple more minutes in the bathroom by yourself to just be alone, like whatever way you can. If you can't just go like full priestess mode and like totally close out the whole world for your entire cycle, just in whatever ways you can start like creating like little increments of space wherever you can, even just like remembering to stop and take deep breaths throughout the day and really drop down into your womb and connect with it. And like one of the things that I did and have done when I've like had to go out in the world and show up for something while I'm bleeding is I have, actually it's right here, I can show you, I have this little crystal right here. It's a Botswana agate, and when I found this crystal it reminded me of a womb.
Oh, it's gorgeous. Yeah.
For a reason, the shape of it, and it's so soft and delicate and pink, and I carry this around with me while I'm bleeding and I have to go out, just as a symbol that I'm paying attention and that I'm honoring my cycle somehow, and have meditated with it many times while I'm bleeding to just kind of like really infuse more of that.
I love that. That's beautiful. Yeah, I might take that one. I might find myself a crystal too. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, there's like all kinds of things that you can do, like especially like if you have to show up for things, just like wear something comfortable instead of what like fashionable, like buy yourself some fresh flowers to have in your house. Like just think about ways that you can really treat yourself. And I personally love to walk around with my hand on my low belly regularly when I'm bleeding, kind of the way that a woman does. She just holds a handful of her baby just to let my womb know that I'm here listening to it and I'm doing my best to be present and move slower. I mean, I'm dreaming of a world where we can fully unplug when bleeding. But until then, all of us women have to do the best that we can with the current life puzzle that we have and get creative and just know that it's enough. Whatever you do, just becoming conscious of your cycle alone is
and
enough.
Also, to speak to that woman who might be really busy, like for the people who don't have children, I don't have children, you don't have children yet. It's like easy to kind of project onto other, and I'm only speaking for myself, so I've done this as well. It's easy to project on other people ideals, right? And like honestly, like my life is far from perfect. My period is far from perfect. And if I have loads of time, like it's almost like I said earlier, like I still need to be doing stuff when I'm on my period. It's just because otherwise my inner critic can come in quite strong. So it's exactly what you said. It's those micro moments. And in actuality, change can only happen from small steps, right? From anyway. So even if you do have loads of time. And I think, and I love to speak to that part that you talked about around like there's a kind of a practical layer to menstrual cycle awareness of like I really like to make sure like my apartment's clean. So I'm like, if you know, like doing my laundry and hoovering and dusting, and then like I get like healthy food, make sure I've got lots of nourishing foods, and sometimes
Yeah.
I batch cook some things so I don't have to do a lot of cooking, and that feels really nice, very practical stuff. But then on a more sort of psycho-spiritual level, and this is what I love about this work, it's kind of like you can read all the books and then you can just like move them to the side and decide what works for you, you know. And for me, it's really that sort of sense of the capacity within yourself to tend to yourself, because being like menstruating is a very vulnerable thing, and our buffers are down, our psychological barriers are down, we're exposed, we're highly sensitive,
Mm.
and we can be, I suppose, kind of like invaded by the world or by other energies, and it's really just to, and even our own psychological critic that we've built up over the many years we've been alive. So it's really that ability, like building that ability to be really kind to yourself from that very deep inner place, and hold yourself tenderly, even if you are in a meeting or you've got a job interview or something. It's like, how can I really, you know, do like you said, like wear comfortable clothing makes a huge difference. Buy a really nice comfortable bra and you know, that you feel good in as well, and that you feel that you know you like to wear.
Yes.
And it's just, yeah, it's life changing. And then coming to that place of just letting yourself be really tender and finding moments of quiet.
Mm.
I love the bathroom one. I do that a lot actually. If I'm in a crowded place or something, I will just like, I'm gonna sit here for an extra few minutes.
Oh,
You know? Yeah.
I'm sure plenty of people have, yeah, totally relate to that. Just anywhere I get some peace and quiet for yourself, even just for a second.
Yeah, because honestly, like change can only happen from those micro moments. So like they're actually really powerful. Like they are not to be dismissed. They're really important. So I'm really glad you brought that up. Because it's really, this very much is, there's a whole, like obviously there's an education around biology with the menstrual cycle, there's a psychological education, but there's also mindset, right? And like thinking about how we think about our period and how we relate to ourselves and how we relate to our healing journey. Like what are our expectations of ourselves, you know, when we want to improve something, you know? Can we you know, sort of take action on the things we can control and then surrender the outcome, you know?
Definitely.
They're the things that I've learned. They're the really hard bits that I've learned on my journey, to let go of that control piece and then make the micro changes. Yeah.
Mm. Yeah, that I think the menstrual cycle is like the best teacher in surrender and letting go of control.
Oh yeah, totally. Oh my God, yes.
You don't have control over that. It's just a long ride, but you can
Yeah.
kind of, like you said, hold yourself and be a facilitator for it and support yourself through it. And I think it's really good that you're bringing that point up, that the micro moments are really powerful, because that's so true. Anything sustainable is going to happen over time in small increments.
Yeah.
That thing, and I think that's really good to just bring to everyone's awareness that it doesn't have to be a big thing. Just the little steps that you do every day and the intention that you have behind it. If you are really, like, you're really wanting to find balance and healing, and you're just, you know, showing up the best you can with your current life puzzle, no matter how challenging it is, it works out in the end, and it makes a difference. And sometimes it just takes a while for things to come full circle, and for you to really start to see the fruition of all of the seeds of intention that you have been planting. But eventually they bloom and you get to reap the rewards from it.
Yeah, it's really trusting that. And I loved what you said as well about surrender and the menstrual cycle. And something I think about a lot actually, Angel. Have you heard of Russell Brand?
Yeah, I know who that is.
So he had Gabor Mate, who's like I think he's a psychologist. I don't know. He's a teacher. He's a spiritual teacher, but he does therapy, and he specializes in addiction. And he's a very interesting man. They were talking. Long story short, they were talking about spirituality and the 12-step program, and the power of surrender. And they were just talking about, you know, this is at the core of all spiritual practices, is trust and surrender. And I was watching it and I was thinking, oh, I wish they'd had like someone to talk about the menstrual cycle, because it's exactly what you said. Like, you can, you know, all those teachings on the menstrual cycle for women, when we practice menstrual cycle awareness, we really learn to embody them and bring them into a very visceral, you know, sort of experience. And it's really powerful when we start to work with the power of surrender during menstruation, as a spiritual practice, or as an emotional processing tool, which it is too, you know. Yeah, it's really powerful. So I hopefully any day now, Russell Brand will give me a call. We'll be talking about the menstrual cycle on his podcast.
You reach out to him.
I actually did. I did, Angel. I did, because he reached out to his audience asking for ideas, and I said, oh, I'm gonna you know, reach out about the menstrual cycle. And his assistant replied back and thanked me and very graciously said that they were going to work through all their ideas. But I never heard from him. I don't expect a call, but it was still nice to be on that email.
That's okay. We're doing our own summit right now.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
That's so awesome. That's so awesome that you even reached out to him.
Yeah. Yes. I think he needs to talk about the menstrual cycle. Well, if you're watching this, you know, we're ready to come and talk.
Totally. We are. We're having our spotlight moment. I see it just, oh man, I just can't even express in words how I feel about seeing the menstrual cycle really being resurrected in our modern day society, and
yeah,
just how incredible it is to be on the front line of that, and being, you know, a channel for that divine energy and movement to flow through and be birthed into the world. It's just can be so exciting being a human.
Yeah, right. Yeah, no, it's really exciting. It's so exciting. Absolutely. Yeah.
I wanted to share a little bit just off of what you were talking about, like some of the things that you do to kind of like prepare for your bleed, like cleaning your space and getting healthy food, and sometimes like batch cooking so that you don't have to expend so much energy. That's definitely like an art. The more you get into menstrual cycle awareness, like going like deeper and fuller on like the ways that you can better support yourself, like pre-menstruation. And like when all of this like quarantine stuff happened, one of my very first thoughts was like, oh my god, time to bleed, like menstrual cycle, oh my god. Not only for myself but everyone. Like, all I've been needing is for women to just not have to be forced to go to work all the time, but just have the freedom to stay at home while I bleed. And like, it freaking happened on a global level. I'm just like, and so I kind of like celebrated that and my own freedom, and just like really took advantage of this global pause, even slowing down the building of this summit. And like all things was like, okay, if the whole world is getting a break right now, I'm listening and I'm taking advantage of this break, and I'm like giving my all to honoring my cycle. And the cycle, my first cycle in quarantine, I just like completely rearranged my space and made it feel really good and reorganized everything. I actually went out and bought myself some plants and some flowers, and like set up candles and crystals and plants all over my room. And I was just like, I just kept thinking like, how can I make my space more inviting for this divine feminine energy to want to be in? How can I like create almost like a temple like space for me to just be in, regardless of like what I experience in my menstrual cycle, whatever comes up for me, but just to really pour my attention into creating a loving space to hold me through that, and just like think about what kind of food is gonna feel nourishing to me. And I probably always make sure that I have some dark chocolate, because
Yeah.
it's like
Me too.
you just have to have it.
Yeah.
Cycle. And and it's been really good to be in the space and have it all refreshed, and to just like have my full time to just be with myself and bleed. And just I was just so grateful for the opportunity to have like a legitimate global excuse just know to everything.
Yeah, yeah, I hear you. I can really relate to that. Yeah, that's gorgeous that you took the time to rejuvenate the energy in your space. That's really important. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's my hope that all women will eventually be able to have that freedom. And I know it's going to be like that in the future, when the menstrual cycle is an integral part of society the world over, and everyone respects it and understands what a gift it is, and how incredible women are, and how important it is to support them and give them the freedom and space that they need to really tune into themselves during this time. And until then, I'm just going to continue to embody that reality to the best of my ability, and continue to offer my prayers for that to be a reality for all women.
It'd be wonderful. Absolutely. Yeah.
Yes.
Love
Okay,
that.
so I feel like, oh gosh, everything just is like just been flowing out like I knew it would. Like, should I even ask that question? I was gonna say, like, women who are like just beginning to step on the path of menstrual cycle awareness. I feel like we've kind of covered some of kind of like the first steps to do is just like create more space. But is there like more you'd like to add for people that are really new to menstrual cycle awareness, that want to start paying attention to their cycle more?
Yeah, I think something that's coming up for me is I suppose to kind of sort of not make the same mistakes I made, which was that to kind of aspire to some ideal, it's not really about aspiring. There is, of course, an aspiring, like you want to heal something or feel better, or you have a goal in mind, but to not aspire to sort of somebody else's kind of situation. So for example, the way that I live my, like for example, like now, like we said about the cooking and the cleaning and the laundry and stuff, like it took me quite a long time for that to come naturally with my cycle. That was hard. It's hard. It's not easy to live in sync with the cycle. It's not something that you just were like overnight, like, oh, I'm going to read this book and then now I can do it. It doesn't work like that. I find it very overwhelming at the start. I was like, oh my God, I don't know anything about my cycle.
Totally.
Like all the supplements, and then like there's also exercising around your cycle, and like relationships, and all the spiritual stuff, and then the self. It's very, it's a lot of information, and it can be quite overwhelming. So I would just say to start with one or two small things, and then just continue with your life, and enjoy those two things, and kind of be curious about how they make you feel. Do they work? Do they not work? And to not turn it into another to-do list. Because for me, it was like when at the very start of my journey, I had like, a whole list of things I wanted to change. And it was this big, basically what I now call an inner critic list. So like,
Yeah.
you have to just be very practical and realistic, but gentle, because, and this is the thing, I've come to learn a lot more about the nervous system. And when we make changes, that's why the small steps are really important, because we're introducing new things to the nervous system, and the nervous system can get overwhelmed quite quickly. And when we introduce things, and our nervous system is in a state of like fight or flight or a state of freeze, it's much more difficult to sustain them. Whereas if we're able to be in a more relaxed, grounded, connected, aligned place, and we introduce a change and we can be curious about it and not hold too many expectations, it's a much healthier relationship we're starting to build with self-care. You know, it's because I would very much describe self-care not as this a thing that you do. It's a relationship, and it really depends on, so it depends on the context of your environment, your place where you live, your community, your family, your responsibilities and obligations, and it's ever changing. So, because I've heard a lot of women say, oh, I had pain this month and it must have been because I didn't do my steaming, or and they give themselves a hard time because they didn't do their mindfulness or steaming. And it's like, okay, that's just be really kind and gentle, compassionate, and just watch the mindset, watch the thinking around how we're speaking to ourselves in relation to the cycle. Because it's easy to kind of, you know, fall into that trap of like it needing to be another thing we have to get perfect. You know. So yeah.
And it's, you bring up a good point. It's really important to not compare to anyone else's situation, because everyone's totally unique, and like self-compassion and self-love trumps all. Like that is the main thing always to come back to. And regardless of your situation and what types of opportunities are around you right now, or what resources you have access to just do the best you can with what you have, and know that that's good enough, and be okay with it, and to just, you know, make those little micro changes.
Exactly. Like
little day.
That's it. Like I have made a lot of changes to my life. There's still millions of changes I could still make, right? But and all the changes I've made have been over the course of like 8 to 10 years, you know. So it has definitely not happened overnight. And there's been things that I did that I decided I don't need to do, that doesn't serve me, you know, like loads of things, because I tried it all. You know, I was like, I'm gonna fix these period pains, you know. But then it turned into a stressful situation. So you just have to, it's just a very gentle, because the thing about this work is it's very powerful. And Alexandra and Shani will speak to that. They'll, you know, it's so even just carving out a little bit of time around menstruation, that in itself is gold, right? It's like, it's just really gold. Yeah.
Well, and just like the intention behind it, and knowing that like there's women all over the world that are doing their best with their current life puzzles to create more space in their own reality bubble to honor the cycle more. It's each one of us individually creating little pockets of space as much as we can, that ultimately brings it back to where it needs to be in our society, which is a really huge, it's like the root of how a society is truly meant to function, and what allows us as a civilization to be guided by the cycles of nature, and to be really in tune with the innate wisdom of our bodies and the earth. It all comes back to the menstrual cycle.
Yeah, we all came from a menstrual cycle. Like that's you know, that's we all came from a menstrual cycle, even the men did. You know. Yeah, that's life. It's a, like, I know, like, jokes aside, but it's a life, death, life cycle. You know, I always refer in my workshops, I regularly refer to the womb as a place of life and death. Which is, you know, it is. And the menstrual cycle, we have an opportunity for that life, death, life cycle to, you know, and to tap into the rejuvenative powers of that every month, is actually, in a way, like it's a deep spiritual gift. It's a practice, but it's also very useful. It's like, you know, you have your spiritual practice in your body, so it's not going to go through, like it's not going to be like a metal object in the airport that's going to ring a bell, like no one needs to know about it, you know. So you know, it's like you've got your magic toolkit in your body all anywhere you go, and that's the wonderful nature of the menstrual cycle. And in a way, well, not in a way, very, very much sort of obviously, when the more you tap into the menstrual cycle, the more you feel connected to your own sense of self, your intuition, your inner authority. And for me, at least, my experience to date has been, I've become much more discerning of my needs. And like, I like to read books on spirituality and self-help and, you know, all of that genre. And it's, at the moment, I'm getting a lot of recommendations because of the global pandemic for, you know, I'm sure you're the same, like lots of things in your inbox around different practices, which is wonderful. But it's like, we can't do it all. Like in reality, we can't do all of that.
No, and it's never ending.
Yeah, I know, right? So you have to decide what works for you and what doesn't. And the menstrual cycle, it's like your own, you can kind of just like take off half of the self-help books on your bookshelf and like, I didn't really need them anymore. It's like, oh, actually all of the wisdom's in me. I don't need some outer validation. Outer validation is important in terms of mentorship and, you know, career guidance or whatever, but that inner authority in terms of like who you are. And for me, that you know, working those energies of the menstrual cycle with the seasons helps to process things through, to come to decisions, to connect to your intuition, to, you know, feel your emotions. Red School, Alexandra and Shani have a lovely phrase which they say, bleed on it. So, you know, the way if you need to make a decision, people will say, oh, sleep on it and then decide tomorrow. And they say bleed on it. So it's like you have your period and then you can make your decision after your period. It's genius.
Yes, I love that. And actually, I was thinking about that when navigating building the summit, about my need to really sit with it through some cycles so that I could truly honor this in the way that it wanted to form, in the authentic way, and not just going by whatever coach or business program or any type of teaching or mentoring would think that a summit needs to be built, to really sit with my own cycle, especially considering the summit is about the cycle.
Yeah, exactly.
I knew that through a couple of cycles with it, at least, to really like tap into what, like how it wanted to be birthed, and it made a really big difference. I'm just gonna move because my phone wants to die.
You can charge it. Yeah.
Overtime today, and we're not done talking, so I'm just gonna sit over here.
Yeah. It's really true though what you're saying. Like, you know, that feeling of if you're out shopping and you see a nice pair of shoes, but you don't really feel like you need them, and then you might leave them in the shop and not buy them, but then you still think about them like 2 days later and you're like, okay, I think I need to get those shoes, you know, or you're still thinking about the same shoes a week later, and you know then they're kind of important and they would, you know, you would actually really like those shoes, and they feel like a good, you know, they feel aligned with your, you know, the shoes that you need to buy or you're looking for. It's like that with the cycle. You can let ideas come through and insights and things, and you might write them down, but then not all of them will stick, you know. It's like snow, like not, well, at least the snow in Ireland, like when it snows here, it doesn't stick on the ground. So and with the cycle it's the same. If we give ourselves space to just let our, you know, minds off the hook during menstruation, and then come back into the inner spring after menstruation, it's like, what has stuck, you know, what's actually important, what feels, what's kind of coming up, where's the clarity here, you know. And I think that's really important, because we can do all this inner work in our heads, but it's just, we have to connect it in with the body. And if the body happens to have a menstrual cycle, we need to include that, you know. We're dismissing a huge part of ourselves if we don't incorporate the menstrual cycle in any kind of inner work or health, for that matter. It's very important. So we're doing it.
Yeah, actually, I find it interesting the way that the atmosphere of the mental plane change, like it's in flux, like all throughout the cycle. I even have been fascinated by watching the change in the mental atmosphere in my mind, like through different times of the day. For instance, like in the morning, you know, like when the energy is all crisp and fresh and I've like meditated and had like a beautiful relaxing morning routine, the way that my mind thinks about things is a lot clearer and confident, as opposed to like if I think about the same things when it's really close to bedtime and I'm tired, I have it like my thoughts are totally different about it. They're much more like inclined to be anxious or self-conscious about stuff or overwhelmed, just depending on like where your energy is. And I know that it's like that throughout the menstrual cycle also. So being able to like sit and kind of like percolate with things to come to like a real true like embodied result, instead of just being impulsive with your decisions, is it takes, I feel like it takes a lot of hassle out of life when you can like wait before you make a decision about everything, you know?
Yeah, you can trust yourself more. And I love what you said. And that's why, like, I describe menstrual cycle awareness as a mindfulness and embodied mindfulness practice, because that's what it is. Like, we're, you know, with mindfulness, you're watching your thoughts and non-judgmental awareness. But with menstrual cycle awareness, you're bringing in the body piece and acknowledging that as a woman with a cyclical nature, you're not the same every day. Because what can happen is if we don't acknowledge it for whatever reason, something happens, what I like to call cycle amnesia sets in. So we could be in the summer, we could be in ovulation, and we can think, oh, this is it now, this is who I am. And you know, we embody this, and we kind of in that moment think that you're that person all the time. And then when we're having our period and we're really, if you are someone who gets a lot of pain, at least what I can speak to is knowing that place of when you're in a lot of pain, thinking that it's going to be like that forever. And it's really very much coming back to that phrase of like, this too shall pass, right? This too shall pass, including the highs as well, you know, and the cyclical nature. And that's why the cycle as a whole, like talking about the whole cycle is really important. And bringing your mindfulness practice into being aware of where you are in your cycle. Like, I mean, they should teach this in schools, you know, it would have made my life a lot easier. Yeah.
Foresee the entire educational system on like the world over,
Yeah.
rebirthed and being a completely new system for our future generations to grow up in, and this definitely being a big part of it, amongst many other things, which is a totally other subject. I just wanted to ask you if there is a certain time in the cycle. I'm pretty sure there is, if I can remember from Wild Power, the book from Sharni and Alexandra. There is a specific time in the cycle where your inner critic is much more expected to speak up.
I'm going to answer that question in a very indirect way. So it's kind of multi-layered, because it comes back to that piece around every woman being different. So to give you a simple answer and to change your question slightly, yes, there is a place in the cycle where the inner critic, the sort of the teaching that Red School offer is the inner autumn is the place to face the inner critic. So there is the kind of the safer place to speak to the critic, to face the critic, to invite the critic, and to listen to the critic. So they've got wonderful teachings on the inner critic and how it is a part of us. It's there to support us. It's there to keep us safe. You know, and the inner autumn. So just after ovulation, not a few days before bleeding, because that's too sensitive, but more the just after ovulation, coming down kind of into mid-autumn, where we have estrogen on our side and we have progesterone on our side. So we've got a nice buffer in terms of the hormones and our psychology. that energy in the inner autumn is very clear and grounded and discerning, so we're able to have a good frank conversation with the critic, because the critic might not be reasonable, and we can have a reasoned, try to reason with it. So that's kind of the home place. But what can happen is people, and what I've seen for myself and a lot of my peers, is that the inner critic is kind of lives everywhere in the cycle because of being a woman or any kind of social conditioning, the whole story, right? So the inner critic is then coming up in the winter and the spring and the summer. And the two places where the inner critic can cause a lot of harm is winter, menstruation, and the inner spring. So it's really important, if you find yourself comparing yourself to people, telling yourself you should do this, you should do that, feeling guilty for taking time off, not asking for help when you actually need it. Those are all versions of the inner critic that can manifest in different ways. It's really important to, again, not to be critical of the inner critic, because that's a double critic, right? But to kind of just notice it first, and then be like, okay, and then over time gently build a kind of ability to ask it to just, park it for now. And then bring in the inner cherishing. So to cherish yourself, the inner champion, to, bring in this sort of, the angel version of the critic. And the same in springtime. The spring is because we're coming out of menstruation, it's a transition to summer. It's a very tender time. A lot of women can feel quite flat during this time after menstruation, and our mental health can be, suppose, impacted here. We can experience anxiety. So the inner critic needs to just not be there. So lots of cherishing, lots of kindness. But that if there's a strong inner critic there, it could take up to a year to really learn how to kind of ask it to move over.
Sure.
Yeah, it can take a long time. So, but yeah, that's a long answer to your question. I hope that made sense.
That's really beautiful. That was a really beautiful answer. And yeah, it's good to know that, first of all, you're not your mind.
No.
And like, you're not the thoughts that are in your head. You are something beyond that. And when you can detach from that and from the mind and the thoughts, and really learn how to parent yourself and see those different like atmospheres of thought, especially like the negative ones, as not you, as like aspects, and treat them kind of like a child, not be critical back, like you said, or mean. Just be calm and mature and
firm.
And know that you're beyond that, and that it's fleeting, it's not permanent, like it's kind of just like moving through, and it's a matter of how you react, to how you behave with it, and just like cultivating that practice of cherishing, like you said, and self-love. And that is totally a practice. It's all of this is just really important, beautiful, powerful inner work of reprogramming ourselves from all of this stuff that's not us, and just uncovering more and more of who we are.
Exactly. It's a practice. It doesn't happen overnight. What I love to do when I started working with my inner critic more, I started to just that whole thing of cherish yourself was like a mantra. Cherish like in my springtime, and also telling myself I don't have to believe the thoughts. Like the thoughts can be there, the negative thoughts, but I don't have to believe them, and that's a different thing, isn't it? Like you said, detach. So those two things, and the critic can show up in very subtle ways, and it can be, we can find ourselves in a bad mood or feeling anxious, and we don't know why. And then when we sit down to really think about it, we trace it back to one tiny thing we saw or thought about ourselves, but it has the power to have quite a strong impact on our emotions, especially when we're feeling like in winter, we're already vulnerable there. So there's lots of TLC and kindness.
Definitely.
It takes time. It does. Yeah, definitely takes time.
It does. We're working on it collectively.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
What a beautiful conversation. Thank you so much for being here with me in this space and sharing your heart and your wisdom with everybody. I know. Yeah. Whew. Sorry. Did you go away for a second?
No, you're here.
Busy fingers on my screen. I know it's late for you on the other side of the globe, so I'm feeling like we should wrap it up here soon, but I did want to just talk a little bit about what your services are, and how to get in touch with you if people want to connect.
Yeah, sure. So my website, as you said at the start, is yourcyclematters.com. And I'm on Instagram. My Instagram handle has I can't really remember my Instagram handle off by heart, but if you go to my website, you'll find my Instagram link at the bottom of the page, yourcyclematters.com. And I do one-to-one coaching. So anyone who wants to really explore this deeply and, sort of put, work through the material that's in those books and menstrual cycle awareness and practice it in a way that works for them, I'm able to help you with that and help you develop a sort of integral practice with menstrual cycle awareness and help you uncover your own hidden gems and truths and work through difficulties. And then I do as well group work. So I do group coaching. Twice a month we have group calls and we're practicing menstrual cycle awareness in a group, and women bring in things that they're working through and we share, and there's teachings on the cycle. And I have an online course which I was due to start during the COVID lockdown, as we're calling it here, but it's been delayed, so I need to decide the date on that. And then I do workshops, so I'm constantly putting new things out into the ether. So
Yeah.
You're
active You're very active with the work. I see that.
I am. Yeah, I like to bring it out in a creative way. So yeah. So and I'm offering a 30% discount on my online courses and coaching with me as well through the summit. So
yay! Thank you so much for a beautiful, generous offering. So I guess if anybody is interested in taking you up on that, they will just mention the summit that they heard that from here. And
yeah, you just mention it with me and we'll sort you out. Yeah.
Wow. Thank you. I feel so blessed.
Oh, thank you, Angel. Thank you for having me. Thanks, everyone. Bye.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. And thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in. And I will catch you for another session. Lisa, I will be in touch. You have a beautiful rest of your night.
Thank you. Bye.
Aloha, everyone.